Hello and welcome to our web talk, Making the EU Sexy, the European elections on social media. So in this hangout, we'll be talking about what candidates are doing to make their campaigns more appealing for voters on social media. I'm Chipana Chimbelu, and I'll be your host for this hangout. And our guests today are the following people. We have Rick Mendez, who is with EU Watch in Brussels, and this is an organization that is actually also working on collecting all the tweets related to the elections using the main hashtag EP2014. So hi, Rick.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
All right. We also have then Niels Hindesman. He is a social democrat here in Germany, and he hopes to be maybe part of the EU Parliament very soon. Hi, Niels.
Hello.
All right. Next up is Martin Fuchs, an election analyst, actually sitting in Hamburg. How are you doing, Martin?
I'm fine. I'm on.
Right. And then back in Brussels, we have Karolina Wozniak, who is a social media editor with the EU Parliament. Hello, Karolina.
Hello.
And last but not least of our guests, we have John Worth, an EU blogger, and he basically blogs about EU issues, including the elections. Hi, John.
Hello from Berlin.
So because we want you guys to take part in this hangout, we will be expecting you to tweet about it and maybe answer the questions. Are these elections sexy enough for you? And you can answer that using the hashtag dwwebtalk on Twitter. And we will have our social media editor, Anne-Sophie Brendlin. She'll be looking at your comments on Twitter. Hi, Anne-Sophie.
Hi, that's right. I'll be looking at your tweets, and I will raise this awesome sign here if I have any good questions from you guys, and I'll be sure to forward them to you.
All right, so this is promising to be a rather exciting hangout. I mean, we're talking about the EU elections, something that's supposed to affect everyone living in Europe and also the rest of the world. But first up, we have this video.
This is an ad. An ad tries to tell you what to do. But this ad wants you to tell us what to do. Use that power and choose who's in charge. Vote from May the 22nd to May the 25th. The European elections, May 2014.
That was a video from the EU Parliament's YouTube channel, and I'd like to ask all of our guests, was that video appealing enough for voters out there? If you think it was appealing, please raise your arm. Right, so we have support coming from the EU Parliament itself. Karolina says yes, but the rest of our guests don't think so. So maybe I'll start with John Worth. Why would you say that wasn't appealing for voters?
I think that's a little bit too harsh. Obviously, the European Parliament has to do that kind of public information campaigning. The difficulty is how many people are going to see such an advertisement, the amount of money which is paid in doing so. I understand why the European Parliament has to make such films, but I don't think it's going to make that much difference to how many people are actually going to go and vote in the European elections, either positively or negatively.
Martin, you also said no. I mean, you just heard what John said. Would you agree with his opinion, and would you be able to tell us what you think was wrong in that video?
I think the video is perfect. It's very cool style, very cool stuff there inside, and it's a cool optic. And if I like to see this, maybe it's for me a motivation to go to a right vote. But I think a lot of the European people don't see the video because it's on a YouTube account of the European Parliament, on a campaign account, but nobody goes there. Nobody goes to the account to look at this video, to watch the video. And so I think they don't reach the people with this video. And so I think that's not effective for the campaign or for the people going to the vote.
Well, Martin, if I would just interrupt you, I was on YouTube earlier today watching another video, and that ad did appear. So I think the EU Parliament, and Karolina, you can correct me or not, is actually paying YouTube some money, I guess, for people to see that ad. Is that correct? Or is there some sort of partnership?
We are doing a promotion of the video to make sure we reach people with it. It's not only in our YouTube channel, it's also shown by different broadcasters. It's on our
different media channels, social media channels on Twitter, on Google+, on Facebook as well, because we try to reach with it as many people as possible. It exists not only in English, but in all languages, including some, for example, other languages like Catalan. So we're trying to make sure that people can understand the message in their own language, and we want to reach as many people as possible. But this is not the only product that we have. We have specific products, for example, for young people on other videos.
Yeah. Sorry, Carolina. It was just to set our conversation and discussion going, and maybe just to kind of get a sense of what is being done out there. I mean, because if you compare it to some of what maybe was done over the weekend with Eurovision, you can't compare in the amount of social media activity going on with the EU elections compared to, say, something like Eurovision or even sports for that matter. So even if the EU does affect our lives, it seems people are not, really getting into it as much, at least not on social media anyway. And maybe I should turn to Niels now. What are you doing exactly as a politician to engage your voters on social media?
Well, first of all, I think that social media, especially for the European elections, has a lot of advantages, because it seems that the European level is a bit further away from the real life of people, and social media helps to bring our policies closer to the people and make decisions which are made in Brussels far away from the real life sometimes a bit more interesting for people. But it's hard. You have to have followers, you have to have, of course, a Facebook account, a Twitter account, and so on. But I also see that there's not that much of interest if you are just starting as a new candidate and not being elected yet, because it's hard to find more than the normal people within the party to join your Facebook account, to join your to follow you on Twitter. But of course, this is the part of the campaign to bring more people to listen what the ideas of Social Democrats are about, and especially what my policy will look like if I'm elected. And so this is the main task now in the campaign, to bring more people also following me on social media.
Yeah, well, it's interesting what you say, because obviously, talking of the you are a social democrat in Germany. Rick Mendes, you are Portuguese. Of course, you're sitting in Brussels, but I'm assuming you are observing what's going on in Portugal as well. Do you think the experience there is slightly different from what's taking place here in Germany? Is the debate on social media different, or even how candidates are interacting with voters?
Well, I think the situation on social media is very different on each European country. Not only social media in general, but also networks. So, for example, some countries will have a presence, a natural presence on Facebook or other social network much more elevated than Twitter. Twitter is still seen, in my opinion, for general people as a very specific tool that has a reputation to be targeted to journalists or politics or people that are in some way following very specific events like sports events or political events, but very specific issues. And I'm not sure that there is the same amount of people on Twitter that there is naturally on Facebook. So I think for Portugal, for example, I don't think that Portuguese citizens are watching the elections via Twitter. And since the national media are doing, in my opinion, a very poor job on reporting about Europe, not only the full year, the whole year, and during the whole, the whole legislature, this is not happening. So suddenly there is the election, and suddenly national TVs have to do something about it, because otherwise you have the kind of scandals like you have in France of the public broadcaster not going through with the candidates debate to the European Commission on public TV. So you have this kind of problems in different European countries. Social media in some countries like Spain, for example, I would say France, Spain, and English in general are the three more present inside the EPE 2014 hashtag.
Yeah, maybe we should turn to John Worth, because obviously you sort of have a an EU-wide view, and you are British yourself. So have you noticed a very different debate going on in the UK? I mean, of course, there is the discussion of them maybe potentially leaving the EU one day. At least maybe next year there might be a referendum. So could you just comment about what kind of debate? Is it more intense, and are candidates actually also making use of social media in a different way?
Yes, the UK debate is extremely intense, it must be said, but it's not necessarily very well informed, or indeed very well informed about the European elections per se. It's a wider debate about kind of in or out of the European Union. So that's the challenge in the UK, is that the debate is focused very, very strongly around Britain's relationship with the European Union, not the European Parliament elections itself. In terms of different countries and their use of social media and how candidates are using it, Twitter is very, very active in British politics, and it's much less active in German politics, as I see it from my own personal point of view. And this depends a little bit on the development of each individual country. Other countries, for example, like Netherlands, has an extremely interesting Twitter environment in politics. So it depends on the individual national environments, which tools work best. I think the advantage of Twitter for the European Parliament elections is it allows that transnational debate to happen to a certain extent, an issues-based debate to happen. And having either of those things on Facebook is much, much harder. I think the candidates that use Facebook very well are candidates that want a deep engagement with their own party supporters, with their own people who are kind of in their own environment already, and a deeper engagement with those. If you wish to debate something widely across the entire political system, then that's where Twitter comes into its own. We have at least seen, even in environments where Twitter has not been so important until now, Denmark, for example, some kind of increase in the use of Twitter in recent months, partly motivated by some candidates in the European elections using Twitter intensively there.
Right. Well, thanks. I just saw from Anne-Sophie that we have a comment or a question from social media. So Anne-Sophie, can you just tell us what that is?
Yeah, actually we have quite a few comments, but one of them was about what Niels Hindersman said before, that he's using more and more social media to interact with voters. And we have one question, let me show it to you, on Facebook. Ivan Burrow says EU politicians don't interact on social media, their interns do it for them. So here's my question, is that true, or are you actually posting yourself?
Well, I'm posting myself. I don't have an intern. I have people also to help me in the campaign, volunteers, but they will also sometimes post something on Facebook. But my Facebook page and my Facebook account, I still do my posts myself.
Right. Maybe we should ask Carolina that as well, because obviously your work sort of involves also current MEPs, some of whom may be campaigning. Do you happen to know whether most of the MEPs are using Facebook and Twitter themselves, or whether they have a team doing that for them?
In our work, we are the central administrative account, so we are not doing any work for the MEPs. They're doing this on their own. We know how many of them are on Twitter, on Facebook, but we don't know how they do it, how they organize their work. So on this question, I cannot help you.
All right. Well,
I can tell that when we do chats with them, it's actually them sitting and typing or talking with people during a hangout.
Right. I don't know. I mean, obviously, maybe what we can go on to now is maybe ask if there's any candidate who is using social media in their campaign very effectively. Is there any candidate out there? Martin, do you know of any candidate who is doing that?
Yes, and John told in his comment before that not so many Germans use social media at its best in the campaign or in the work as an MEP. But one or two guys I like to recommend, and one is young Philipp Albrecht. It's from the Green Party. It's a very young guy. I think it's the youngest MEP from Germany as well. And he has the magic of social media. He understands the culture behind, because he uses online and offline between, and he's not an offline guy to use half an hour a day the online things, and then 23 hours on the offline guy. And he knows if he on the online, he have to be motivate the offline guys. And when he is on an offline event, he uses as normal the online things. And then he has his advantage is he has on the security data issues and so it's, for him it's more easier to be in the social media things because he is a net politician, and so it's all of these net political interested guys and people are on the internet, and so he reached it better than a guy who is on the focus on the environmental things or on the financial things. Yes.
Right. So basically, he does interact with voters. So I mean, from what we see on the on different levels and different countries, I know it's really complicated with the EU, but in terms of candidates, are they interacting more, or are they broadcasting just their views and policies, and then they just leave people to retweet that and do whatever with that information? Maybe John, you would be able to say what you've seen and observed on the EU level.
Yes, I think we're seeing different patterns of development. I'd just like to also add one other politician who's from Netherlands, who's very good at using social media. That's Marietje Schaake from D66, a young politician who's already a member of the European Parliament, who does lots of work about EU foreign policy. She's very much worth following. I think there's also the case that smaller political parties are maybe better at this than larger political parties in the main. There are obviously some exceptions, but a lot of Liberals and Greens are better in Brussels than Social Democrats and Christian Democrats. What I think is very important to say as well is if you've been engaging with a politician over a period of time in social media, you can see which ones are the honest ones and which ones are the good ones versus which are the ones that are just doing public relations on social media. I'd just like to point out, for example, a bad politician in Brussels, Viviane Reding, the European Commissioner. We know that her account has been tweeting at the time she's been stood on her feet in the European Parliament, and she didn't have an iPhone in her hand when those things were being written. So we can be pretty certain that's not actually her. Now, I think if you're engaging with politicians on an everyday basis, you can see which are the sorts of ones that will be engaging and which ones are less likely to reply and answer to you. And that's the individual user's responsibility to work that out. What I think we're going to see after the European elections is a higher number of MEPs and indeed commissioners in Brussels who are going to have to be present in social media. The numbers are already quite high if you compare the Brussels level and politics, and that will just rise still further.
I think we're getting some sound issues on your side. I don't know if it's Mike or putting in, but we have an echo effect. Everybody has that? Has everybody an echo effect? Is everybody hearing an echo?
Yes, hearing an echo too.
Right. So maybe hopefully that will fix itself. I can go on. Where are you hearing that from?
We can mute our microphone and see where this is coming from.
Yeah, maybe it would be better to mute. Let's see. Okay, sorry. I think it's better.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Then we'll just carry on now. I was just gonna pick up from where John had left off of politicians. Like you had mentioned something about parties which are newer and younger using social media in a different way. And I was gonna ask this question to Niels. You're a Social Democrat, one of the oldest parties here in Germany. Do you think there's less of an incentive for a party like yours, or for someone in a party like yours, which has a big member base here in Germany, to use social media? Do you think that you don't need to be on social media as much because you know that you do have voters in large numbers in Germany?
Well, we used to have more voters, especially in national elections, so that means that we always try to find new voters and, of course, mobilize people to every election. And there is a change, what we can observe, and this is why also professional campaigners in our party are now spending more money, more budget on social media and so on to reach new target groups and to also interact with them. So that means that also we understood that there is a high potential and that we should use it a lot more. And but on the other hand, we still have a lot of members and of course also voters who are not so much online. And maybe it's also because they live sometimes in rural areas where we don't have all this access to high-speed internet and so on. But they still expect from a candidate that he or she is also presenting herself in real life and is going to some small village even, and to present themselves and say, okay, that's me, I'm running for European Parliament, and this are my political agenda. The day only has 24 hours, so you have to decide on where you spend your time resources, rather on social media or on real activities with real voters, where you interact in real life with them. But on the other hand, I know that I have a lot of followers also on my Facebook webpage, and they also want to see from me what I'm doing, because they cannot be present at every event taking place during the campaign. And so, I mean, you have to combine and try to combine both. And I'm very sure that it's important to reach also new target groups and new voters who are more affiliated to this social media.
Right. I was just going to ask you quickly, which one's more important, social media or the traditional campaign? Niels, for you, which one's more important at this time, because you are campaigning at this moment? So if you just tell us one or the other, which one are you focusing more on?
Well, it's sort of balancing itself. So I would say it's 50-50. I mean, I really try to do a lot on Facebook and Twitter, but the experts will probably say this in a few minutes, that my Facebook account and my Twitter account could be used more, and that I could have more followers. I know that. But the situation is that it's just me and some volunteers supporting me, so it's not that I have endless resources put on that. So on the same time, I try to do and spend at least half of the time on the professional and campaign, and the campaign was the in the traditional way. So that's where I would say I do 50-50.
All right. And Rick, is that what you've observed as well? Is it a 50-50 situation for most people campaigning?
It really depends on the political parties, in my opinion. You have, for example, the SNDs have, it seems, some good teams doing a good job, even at the European level. So if Martin Schulz is going to Italy or different countries, he will have different teams, really working out on social media to put pictures, to put contextual information to what Martin Schulz is saying. So you have, it's really depending. But I think we are far from the US level, where social media was, for example, for the Obama's campaign, was a really a tool that was really important, and data mining was also very important. Here in Europe, I don't think we have the market. I mean, we don't have the amount of citizens using the networks the same way in the US. So it's really something evolving, and I think this one here is maybe an investment for many politicians, many political groups, to actually invest more time and more energy on social media, because on the next election, I think it's going to be largely different from what we have today.
All right. Maybe we should kind of turn into the last question, because briefly, maybe all of you could tell me, or maybe before we do that, actually, I think we have a comment from social media. I'm sorry about that. And Sophie was there, and I didn't see her, but I have now. And Sophie, can just tell us what has been said or asked on social media?
Yeah, we're getting a lot of responses on the question whether getting in touch with voters by using social media is actually making them more sexy. There is one comment on Twitter by the UK EPP that is saying social media is an essential way for new parties like us to connect with potential voters. And then on Facebook,
we're having issues with you and Sophie. Can you hear us fine, or?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Is there an echo for everyone else?
We'll have some difficulty.
Okay. Maybe Niels and Carolina, your mics will be just, yeah, okay. And so we can carry on?
Sure. Okay. So I was just saying that we have a couple of comments. One of them is by the UK EPP that is saying social media is an essential way for new small parties like us to connect with potential voters. And then on Facebook, we have a comment by Yuri Yakushko, who is saying nothing makes them, as in politicians, more sexy than being open and reasonable decisions. And then we have one comment that is saying the opposite by Nelson Andres Perez Rodriguez, who's saying no, in Latin America, to interact with them is the same as to interact with delicants.
Right. Maybe I'll just take something out of those comments from Anne-Sophie, maybe. Does social media make candidates appear more open and transparent? This is just maybe briefly, if we could start with John, yes or no, with maybe a very, very, very short sentence added to that.
Yes, if they do it themselves, yes.
And then Carolina?
I don't want to judge the candidates, but I can tell you that it's very important for the parliament to make it transparent, and I think social media are helping us with this.
Okay, Martin? Mike?
Yes, I think it's more it's the best way to open the parliament and the work of the politicians. But I think the trick is to have to understand the culture behind social media, and then it's the best way for transparency.
Okay, Niels?
Yes, I think that it's having a high potential to bring the European level closer to the voters and the people.
Okay, and finally we have Rick.
Yep, definitely. I think it's good if they do it themselves, and if they are present, it's great to engage in more transparency.
All right. So it seems like doing it yourself makes a huge difference, because obviously having interns or someone else doing it on your behalf just makes you look a little bit not as trustworthy as someone who's sitting there and doing it on their own. I do have also one question about how we can make social media more appealing, at least for in the EU, because obviously the comparison is always with the United States and maybe a few other countries, which where social media is really sort of taking the leap forward. What's the one thing that you could do to make social media more exciting for voters in these elections or in the next ones? Because maybe the elections are way too soon to talk about that. We'll start with Rick this time.
Well, that was my idea 2 years ago. Was how European elections are coming, and what can I do to first understand better how it's working, how Europe is working, how the Parliament is working, and what can I do, because I'm a webmaster and I work on the web. What can I do to engage with people, and then to try to have people to engage with the different accounts. So that's the principal reason why I started the EU-Watch, was really trying to engage with people and trying to really put common information from common people at the same level of tweets that are coming from recognized media institutions or MEPs or whatever. So I wanted to mix opinions, and for me this was one way to do it.
So also engaging with people is what you would say. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Niels?
I would absolutely agree. I think that all candidates should spend more resources on social media to interact with their voters, and this is what I will also see as the main task for my campaign. And so I know that I can improve there a lot, and maybe we'll see how things go out on the 25th of May. And maybe I will improve also my social media presence then a bit more.
All right, Martin.
Yes, I think Niels told all the right things, and I think it's to engage the people 5 or 6 days before the election is. I think it's very, very hard. I think the trick is that we have to engage the people 4 years before the election is. And it's very hard now for Niels because he's the first time as candidate. But if you are voted or if you are elected, then you have to start with the social media engagement for the next election. You have to engage people all the time and not only in the 4 weeks before the election is. And I think that's the hardest thing, to engage people, not only in the campaign times, or all the time if you are a politician in the parliament.
Right, so continuity is important. And Carolina, what would you say? What would that be?
I think we will continue working on the fact that people, to make people aware of the fact that they can contact us through social media, that they can ask a question, they can send us a comment, and that we will respond. And as it was said previously, it's not only during the election time, but also afterwards.
Okay, and John, finally. We don't hear you.
There's an error. Wait a minute. Now I'm unmuted. Now it's good. No, I would say that social media can give everyday citizens a voice in European Union policymaking, not only at elections, but also in between times. So be that contacting a member of the European Parliament, or signing an online petition, or blogging about the things that do or do not work in the European Union. So that's what I've been doing now for a number of years as a blogger about the EU, is kind of telling those stories, what does and does not work in the European Union, and trying to get those matters that are important to me out to a wider audience, and to try to apply some pressure to some MEPs. And social media allows me to do that. So I'd encourage anyone with an internet connection to get involved, blog, tweet, post questions on Facebook, because your voice can be heard in Brussels if you're organized enough and determined enough.
All right. Thank you for the final words. So you heard that. If you want to get involved, get onto social media, and if you want to get involved and talk to us, get into on social media and use that hashtag dwwebtalk, because unfortunately we have come to the end of our Hangout, but we still want to hear from you, so do use the hashtag to join us. And I'd like to take this moment to thank all of our guests for joining us. We really enjoyed this discussion. For the rest of you out there, like I said, join us again, but you can also visit our Europe special on dw.de/Europe2014. So hopefully we'll hear from you on social media.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.